In this video, we're going to focus on how we can show the text if we hover, for example, on the data set here outside the ring. It shows the text outside, but if I hover down here, it shows inside, and you can see here it shows the values, and it will grab as well the colors of every item here. So let's start to look how we can do this. So let's start to look how to show the text inside or outside the Doughnut chart on Hover in Chartjs. So first of all, what we need, of course, is our default code or boiler template, which you can find on chartjs3.com getting started. Scroll down here, and by the way, this link is as well in the description box. Once you're on here, copy this. There we are. If you want to understand this code, make sure you watch this video here that explains it all. So then I'm going to just paste that in there, cut out this, put this in here. Once I did that, I will maximize the size on this. I'll make this 50% because this is a Doughnut chart here. So this is fine. Let's scroll down here and convert it into a Doughnut chart. Save, refresh. Alright, what I want to do now is I want to remove the scales, minimize or narrow down the Doughnut ring size. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the scales here. We go in here, put a comma, and then we can say here Doughnut or cut out percentage, which is like this. We do 90%. Save that, refresh. Alright, this works. I want to duplicate this, so I'm going to copy this and duplicate this data set, but I'm going to give it some different values and some different colors. Paste that in there, and then what I want to do here, I will change the color into, let's say 1, 1, 1, and then here 3, 3, and here number 3 as well. Save, refresh. Alright, so as you can see here now we have a nice difference in that, but of course just to make it more clear, let's change the color by copying the border color here and put that in there. Save, refresh. Alright, so now you can see a clear distinction between these two data sets, and you can see here this data set is the outer ring, which is data set index 0, and this one is data set number 1 or index number 1. What I want to do as well is I want to remove this text here, or basically the legend. We don't see any value in that. So what I'm going to say here, plugins, I'm going to say here legend display equals false. Save, refresh. Alright, now we have this. Next, what I want to do here is I want to have some space here, because that space will be necessary to draw that so-called text above the Doughnut chart. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to say in the plugins, or sorry, in the options, just before the plugins, I'm just going to say here layout, and then I'm going to say here padding, and then I'm going to assign padding to the top. So I say top. Let's do this 30 pixels for now. We might make it bigger. We can see later on how it will look. So we have enough space now here for some text. So let's put in a text, and what we want to do, of course, is when we hover over the outer ring, we should see the text here above, but when we hover over the inner ring, then the text will be in the center here. To do this, I need to create a separate plugin. So after the options here, comma, we're going to say plugins, and then we put in this item here, and we can say this plugin will be the Doughnut text. Doughnut text, that's the way we spell that. Copy this text here, put that in here. I'm going to say here // this, and then we say plugin block constant Doughnut text equals ID, although we won't be using the ID feature, so it doesn't matter really. And I'm going to say here, when would we like to draw this? We say after the data set has been drawn, then we draw this. So data set draw, I'm going to say chart, comma arcs, comma plugin options. Although these two here we won't be using. So what we want to do here now is we want to do an object destructuring. If you don't know object destructuring, I'm going to recommend you one of my videos about understanding Chartjs object destructuring. So I'm going to go here quickly. That video you can find in the description box, by the way. So sorry. So if you need that one, you can watch that there. So what I want to do is CTX, because I want to draw in the canvas. I want to have the data because we'll be needing the data. Next, I want to have here the options. We'll be using that. Next, what I want to do here is an underscore active. This will be important. I will explain later on. And then the chart area, which is one of the most important items. I have a video as well in the description box, understanding chart area for Chartjs. So I can say top, bottom, left, right, width, and height. And once we did this, equals chart. That's it. So now we have this. I'm going to say here ctx.save to save all variables above, or having our default settings ready like this. And then what we want to do here is basically, let's start with the basics. What I want to do is I want to draw a text first. Let's draw the text here. And once we draw the text, afterwards we want to make it smart or intelligent to understand when we hover over one or the other. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say here ctx.font. And the font, I'll just make this bold, 30 pixels. And then we're going to say sans serif, which is the font family of Chartjs. Next, what I want to do is I want to say here ctx fill text to draw the text, and this should be in parentheses. Then in here we're going to get the text. Then we have here what we call the X position and then the Y position. For now, I'll just say here 20 and 20 and save this. If we do this, let's refresh, you can see here this works. Alright, so this is the first one, but of course what I want to trigger it on hover. When we hover, then we should see the text and not like this immediately. So let's start to work with the active here. The active gives us the confirmation if we're hovering within one, or if we're hovering within a segment, yes or no. Very important here. I'm using this underscore active. However, underscore active is not really a recommended item, or let me explain like this. For Chartjs 3, this is fine, no problem, but this can indicate that they might change this if there will be a Chartjs version 4. So this might not work on version 4 if ever that will come out or will be released. So that's an important thing to note. Anyway, for now, because we're working with Chartjs 3 and they're still developing Chartjs 3, I'm going to accept this and this is fine. So just a heads up on that. So what I want to do here is basically the following. I'm going to say console log and just show you this active. Let's save this, refresh, open up the console log here. We get here the item, and if I hover over item, as you can see here, if we're hovering over the white space or nothing, it shows nothing. But once we hover over one of these elements or segments, it shows something here. Let's click on this and you can see here what we're hovering on. And this is very interesting. It indicates here which dataset we are, dataset index 1, and then also the index itself. So this is basically the position of the data point, or basically the data index. So this helps us to indicate on what element or segment of the donut are we hovering on. This gives us a lot of information. So what I want to do is I'm going to create an if statement now, and this if statement will be triggered on active, but only if we have a length here, index 0 for example. So we're going to say here dot length. If that is the case, if this is true, in that case I want to do something, which is, let's say here now console log say yes or something like that. Let's say here yes. So if I save this now, refresh, you will see now if I hover over it, we get the yes. If I hover away, it doesn't show anymore this blank value, which is good because then it will not confuse our drawing of the text. So this here shows now the item and this works fine. So now what I want to do is, of course, I want to cut this out, put it in here. Let's indent this properly, save, refresh. Now if we hover over it, you can see here, doesn't matter where we hover over it, it will only show if we hover over one of these segments. Alright, so now we have basically the first part showing the item. But of course we're not done here, because what we want more is we have to position it properly. So what we're going to do here is, well, before we even do the positioning, I want to just extract the so-called item. Because what we need is basically the value of it, because when I hover over this, I want to show here number 3. And I don't want to show Sunday because they're both Sunday, as you can see here. But what I want to show is the data set label, which is weekly sales. Well, let's change this. Let's say this will be the special sales. I have no idea, and this would be the weekly sales. All right. So we have these two options here. So one should be weekly sales, other one should be special sales. So how do we do this? Well, let's change the text here first. To do this, all we need to do here now is we need to get, well, basically the label. So I'm going to say here new constant, and I'm going to give this constant the name data label equal. how do we get this? Well, we have the data here, and this data is a reference to this item here above, basically here. So what I want to do is from the data, I want to go to data sets and then the label. All right, to do this, I need to know basically here we have here the data dot data sets, and then this will be the index, would be 1, 0 or 1, and this will be dynamic later on. And then we're going to say here label. That's the first one. So if I just grab this and put that in here, you will see this works, but it's static. Weekly sales, and this, no matter what we have, weekly, it's always weekly sales. There should be other sales. And of course, you can see here it's being clipped off. We have to solve that later on, so don't worry about that. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to change this one here to make this more dynamic. How do we do this? Remember here the length. So I'm going to do here console log again, and let me show you exactly what we're going to do here. Save this, refresh. If I hover over it, we see the information. Click on this, you can see here index 0. It doesn't matter if you are on this one or that one, it's always index 0. Why is this always index 0? Because we're hovering over one specific item here. So this is very important. If you're hovering over one specific item, or basically like one element at the same time. So this is not like a line chart where we have, for example, 2 or 3 dots on the exact same position. So this would mean, well, if you have 2 or 3 dots on one item, in that case you would have multiple items, but we don't have this. So that doesn't matter. Don't have to worry about that at all. So what we need here, index 0, and then we're going to grab here the index. So what I'm going to do here is say here index 0, and then we say here dot, well, let's get the data set first. The data set index. So if I get this, say refresh, we should see here now 0, 1, 1, 0. So it understands already what we need. So what we can say here is we can grab this and let's put it in here, or maybe we can just give this a proper constant as well to short it, or to make a shorthand of it. So I'm going to say here, we can say here the data set index value. I'm just going to give it like that because we have here all of these items. I want to avoid too many same value names or constant variables, so we get confused. So this is that, putting in here. All right. So once we have this, if I save this now, refresh, we should see now it changed. Here we are. So that's the first one. Now what we need is, of course, we need the data set or the data index. Sorry, not, well, that's the data index, my bad. It's the data index because we have now the data set index, because we want to know now the item here, the value, for example. So how do we get this? Well, let's go back here. Save, refresh. Hover over this. Then we click on this, we get here 0. And then we see here element, and then look at this very carefully. Here we should see here the index. Oh, sorry, that's not even in here. It is already outside of it, which is index. So if I go here, well, let me just show you. We're going to just say here dot index. We should see here immediately a value. Number 5, number 4, which is correct. That's the index value, and this should be 0. There we are. All right. This shows us already the most important item. So we can say here constant. Let's say here data index value equals this. All right. Now we get this. We can say here, well, this is the label. This is fine. But we need to have now not only the label I want to show, but maybe as well the value, or the value of it, number 3, for example, here, and this number 18. So how do we do this? Let's copy this, or make a new constant. That will make more sense. Constant, and we say here data index, or data point, I guess. Maybe that's even better. Data point. And then I'm going to grab the value. Well, we have this one here. I guess we can just grab all of this, put that in here. But we're not done yet. Then I'm going to say here, this should be then the data, and this data will be referenced with this. If we do this, we can do here, let's do a simple concatenation, and maybe later on we can fine tune that. And we say here plus. All right, if I do this and then this column here, save, refresh, there we are. So what I just did, basically I string concatenate the column and then a space and then the value. So that's basically here, this is the concatenation. I guess this should be a very familiar item. All right, So now we have this here, and what I want to do here now is a few things. I want to fine tune this. I want to position this in the center, or at least text align center. Let's do that one first. So I'm going to say here, enter, ctx.text align equals center, and this is a string value. Save that, refresh. Alright, so now we get this more in the center, but now we need to make sure the positioning is correct here. So we have to work on that. And maybe what I want to do as well is a baseline as well. Let's do the baseline. ctx.text baseline. So baseline is, well, this center is basically align left, right, and center basically. That's that one. That's the basic item. Just think about a text document that you want to position it. This one here is the vertical alignment, which is very common in a column where you put it in a text. So we're going to say here middle. So to position the baseline in the center. Alright, so you can see here it is in the center, and you see here the text there. Why? Because the text there is it starts at 20, I think. So if I do here, what I can do here is basically getting here the width, that's this one here, divide by 2, which is basically the chart area from this point to there, divide by 2, and you will see this will work. So if I put it in there, then divide it by 2, save, refresh, there we are. If I remove this, you will see that this will not be any more properly centered, because it will be aligned left. It will be basically here, and it's starting to go that side. Alright, so that's a lot of the logic. Anyway, that's a lot of the logic that we can skip for now, because that is just canvas. So alright, so we have this here now, and you can see here I'm not 100% satisfied with the size of it. It's slightly overlapping our text here. We're going to fix that one. So let's start to look at the next item before we even do that one, is the positioning here. So we have this calculation here. This here, of course, needs to be solved correctly. So what I'm going to do now is the following. We're going to create here basically a, well, hoisting, but this hoisting is just a value, and basically what this hoisting is putting a value at the very top. Just think about like a flag. When you pull the flag on a flagpole up, we call it hoisting a flag. Hoisting the flag to the top. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to put a variable here at the very top, or at least very top for our item here. But I want to make this dynamic because remember, I want to show one up and another one down. And these values are not defined until we have a if statement basically, where you can see if we are working with data set 0, which is this one here, the outer ring, then it should be showing up. But if we're working with data set 1, which is the inner ring, then it should show down here. So this value here should be positioned in here as x and y. So what I'm going to do here, first of all, I'm going to say here x will be equal to this for now. That's the first one. And then we say here y will be equal to, well, we have to calculate that one. So I guess I'll just put it 20 for now. I'm going to say here x and y. Let's do this first. So if I save this, you should see here there's no real difference, as you can see here. So what I want to do now is to make sure that this becomes different. So what I'm going to say here, if, and this if statement here will be nested within this one here, and this if statement will just check only one thing. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to say if this index number 0 and then dot data set index, that's the one we want, is equal strict to 0. If this is true, we want to say these are the values. If this is not true, we're going to put in another values here. We're going to say if this is 1, because with this logic here, I assume you have only 1 or 2, or you have a maximum of 2 donut rings. It doesn't make sense to have multiples, or maybe you could do, but that's up to you, of course. However, I'm going to keep it like this. So then, what I want to do here is, well, we have here some work to do. I'll just leave it as it is for now. Let's save that, refresh. And what we're going to do is let's solve this issue here, and later on we're going to put in a position here. And you might say, well, we could do here just the height divide by 2. Yes, but not 100% correctly. There's another way to do it, by the way, that's easier. So let's start to work on this. What I want to do here is, and this is the reason why I have the options here. Remember we had this padding here, but I'm not satisfied with the padding. I want to make this bigger. So this is dynamic, of course, and now it looks better. But what I want to do is make sure that we get this value calculated in our positioning. So what I'm going to do here is basically this. We're going to say here options. That's where, and then we're going to do here dot layout. That is where it's positioned. Dot padding. Dot top divide by 2, and that's it. Save that. Refresh. All right. So now we are in a proper position for this. Let's move this one down here. So for that, we're going to undo this. And well, we could do here something like this. For example, height divide by 2. I'm going to save that, refresh this. But I don't want this because I want to make sure that the center is perfect in the center. You might say, well, we just have to plus the top here. Yes, but not really, because if we would have a legend, it would be different. Of course, it will impact the design. So I want to do it here with proper logic. And what we're going to do here is we're going to show you here a way. We're going to grab this. And what I want to do here is just say here console log. And I'm going to say this.active, save, refresh. And I'm going to show you the values that we can grab. So if I'm in here, all right, then I open one of those, you can click on this, and then you can see here the elements. This elements becomes very important for us because look at this. You get here the X and Y position, which is the exact center here. Calculate including this item here, or how much is the padding up, and if there would be a legend, a title, whatever, it would be recalculated to put it perfectly in the center, because that's the center of the circle here. So we're going to grab this. So all we need to do here is say dot, make sure this is index 0 dot element dot x, and then if I grab this one, put that in here, and then we have another one, we do it in here, y. This one we can then remove, save, refresh. All right, so now there we are. Absolutely phenomenal. I want to finalize this. All right, you can see the values are changing here as well. Number 3, 1, this one here, 18, and then 12. So everything works. Final item is the color. I want to grab the color of the border, and then this one here, the solid color, that once we hover over it, the text changes color. So to do this, I'm going to say here ctx.fill style, and then the fill style will be whatever the color we want. If we make here blue, for example, it will change this to blue, but I don't want it like this. I want to have the border color. How do we get this? Well, remember we are in the data here, and basically we can just grab this, say here. Then what we're going to say is the data set. So what is the data set in our case? We have the data set would be the data set index value is this one here. So I say data set, or sets by the way. And we say here the index value, and then dot border color. And the border color will get as well the index number of the data point. If I save this and then refresh, there we are, number 18, number 1, there we are, and everything works now nicely, and this is all perfectly in the center, as you can see. And that's basically the way how you can change text and move them up and down. So if you enjoyed this video and maybe you want to do even more, you want to have text with lines and etc, I'm going to recommend you this video here, which is how to create a donut chart with labels outside with connecting lines, which is absolutely phenomenal as well to do because it's a quite nice way of presenting text and data.